Alright, what's up, man? Miss Kajava. I'm basically about to talk about like UFC versus WWE. I don't know why people keep comparing UFC fighting to the WWE. I mean, you got UFC, this is competition, this is sports competition, contact sports, and you have WWE. This is kayfabe, scripted, pre-known results, and I mean, people are comparing UFC to WWE. I'm like, why, brother? I mean, if we compare UFC to WWE, then we should be comparing hockey and football and rugby, all together. I mean, UFC, these people are fighting for like a championship. Like you got some of these guys from like Russia and Germany and Japan, really Asia and all that. Europe, basically, it's Europe, Asia, Africa. These people are fighting for national pride. I mean, unlike in the United States, I mean, some of these people go back to their countries and they get really ridiculed if they lose. I mean, we're like one of the only countries that our government doesn't really control sports. And I mean, if you look at WWE, I mean, there isn't. I mean, they've even taken away from it. I think it was maybe in 06 or 07. After the Chris Benoit incident, they started taking away sports competition. Because the federal government started getting down on them about steroid use. And now they're just WWE. They're entertainment, underlying entertainment. This is entertainment. And they're losing fucking ratings because of that. And then everybody wants to say, oh, well, UFC is going to take their place. I'm like, well, UFC and WWE aren't the same fucking thing, man. I mean, and then another thing that kills me is when people compare boxing to UFC. I'm like, dude, the sport is called mixed martial arts. I mean, we don't say, oh, man, UFC or Dream or K1. You know what I'm saying? We didn't say Pride. It's MMA. You don't say that shit, man. I'm like, but people just ignorant, man. I mean, I've been watching wrestling, I'll probably say since 1994. That's 15 years. I'm 21 years old. And I've been watching UFC since 2003. I got into it when I first saw Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture. They were getting ready to fight the third time. And third or second time, and I saw them, I had DirecTV, and they were doing like the promos for like Liddell and Couture, and they showed the fights, whatever, and I was like, wow, man, And I've been hooked ever since then, and people are sitting there comparing UFC to WWE. It's like, dude, let's be serious, man. I mean, these people are training for real. WWE, they're just lifting weights. I mean, yeah, they may do not to downgrade them, but but I know Batista does mixed martial arts training, but he does it to get in shape. I'm like, you can't compare these two, man. This is two different businesses. They said the UFC is going to be gone in a few years. This is just a fad or whatever. I'm like, what do you mean it's just a fad, man? This shit has been around forever. Mixed martial arts did not get started by UFC. Mixed martial arts has been around. What do you think these Abu Dhabi tournaments are, these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments? I mean, there's nothing but mixed martial arts. I'm like, come on, man. And like, they're saying it's not a real sport. I'm like, dude, if you watch the Olympics, let's see. Wrestling is in the Olympics. Kickboxing is in the Olympics. Boxing is in the Olympics. Karate, judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, so on and so forth. And you can combine all these things into one factor, and you get mixed martial arts. The UFC puts it on TV and serves it to us, and now everybody has a freaking problem with it. I mean, parents are saying, oh, this is too violent. Well, boxing is too violent. Football is too violent. Hockey is violent. Rugby is violent. Basketball can be violent. I'm like, I mean, the shit that we see on TV, we see more sex on TV than we see UFC. I'm like, so I mean, what's the problem? I mean, you got all these fucking cherry flavored parents, all these that's just bitching about their kids or whatever, but meanwhile their kids are going around bringing guns to school or whatever, or gang fighting these kids, or beating up homeless people while they're at home watching fucking ABC News or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So kids see, I mean, UFC isn't gonna make kids want to go out and beat the shit out of everybody. UFC is something that you watch on TV. It's like, damn, I wish I could do that. But in all actuality, most people who try to do that shit without, really being into it get the asses kicked. I mean, I'm a big fan of MMA. I watched it for 6 years now, like I said, since 03, man. Dude, I know so much about MMA. It's not even funny. You know, any fighter that comes up, you know, I talk to people like, man, I don't know who this guy, like with Shogun, first was coming in the UFC. People were like, man, who the fuck is Shogun? He's fighting Forrest Griffin? Yeah, I'm like, hey, man, Shogun, you know what I'm saying, was a badass, man. You know, Griffin beat him. And then, you know, you had when Rampage debuted, you know, and when Brock Lesnar, you know, I'm going to speak on Brock Lesnar involved in this. Brock Lesnar came from WWE. I am not mad at Brock Lesnar. I am not mad at Brock Lesnar for being the UFC heavyweight champion. You know why? Because the interim UFC heavyweight championship belt was made because Randy Couture was beating the shit out of everybody and there was nobody for him to fight. And he refused to fight anybody until they put some decent competition in front of him. Brock Lesnar fought Frank Mir, lost. He fought Heath Herring, and he won. Randy Couture saw this, and he said, hey, throw me in there with the young guy. I need a fight. Randy Couture makes his own fights. A lot of people don't know that. There's some fighters in the UFC, you can schedule your own fight. I mean, just like boxing. I mean, if Mayweather says, I want to fight Mosley, Mosley agrees, and all the camps get together and the money gets made, it's going to happen. Randy Couture said, I want to fight Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar won the fight. There's no reason to be pissed off at Brock Lesnar. Yeah, he only had 2-3 fights coming into that fight. He did not, I would say he did not deserve a shot at the title, but he did not ask for it. Randy Couture made that shot. He said, give me Brock Lesnar, I want to fight him. Brock Lesnar beat him. Done story. If you were given the opportunity to fight Fedor Emelianenko and you were like, well, fuck it, I'll do it, and you just so happened to beat Fedor, of course, you know what I'm saying, everybody's going to ridicule you. They're going to be like, oh, man, it's bullshit. You don't deserve this, all this and that. You don't deserve, you got beat by nobody. Yeah, but, I mean, you didn't ask to fight Fedor Emelianenko. Fedor Emelianenko asked to fight you and you won. You didn't ask to fight Randy Couture. He wanted to fight you and you won. I'm like, come on, man. I mean, you can't get mad at Brock for doing what everybody else would have done. I mean, that was a big payday for him, too. You know, and really and truly, you know, he beat Mir. You know, to me, he has not solidified himself as the #1 heavyweight. I mean, to me, he has to be Shane Carwin. Then he has to be Cain Velasquez. If Cain Velasquez doesn't get past Ben Rothwell, he has to be Ben Rothwell. I still say he has to beat, you have to be Minotauro. He has to be Minotauro. And honestly, I don't think Brock probably could, I think, you know, he could beat, you know, so there's a possibility he could beat Carwin if he can take him down and just put all his weight on him. You know, or he could beat Velasquez, because, you know, Velasquez, you know, I'm kind of iffy about that cat. But Minotauro is one of them guys that you have to be on the lookout for, man. So I don't know. I think Minotauro probably could get him. I mean, if he can get Minotauro on the ground, you know, Minotauro is black belt jiu-jitsu. I mean, so it's gonna be like, okay, you got me on the ground. Good job, guy. You know, so the first thing you're gonna say is Frank Mir too. But I mean, come on. If you look at the Frank Mir Brock Lesnar fight, you're gonna be like, if you look at it from my perspective, you look at Frank Mir coming into the fight, he was floating on ice, he had his arms open, he had his head tilted back, he was looking like he was just riding the fucking neon lights, and then he got in the cage, and he got his ass whooped. He looked like he didn't really want to be there. I mean, he had shots on the cat, man. I mean, dude, come on, I mean, Brock Lesnar isn't, he isn't, nobody can just take you down. I mean, George St. Pierre proved that with Matt Hughes. I mean, so Brock Lesnar cannot just, everybody can get stuffed at least once. Nobody stuffed Brock Lesnar but Randy Couture, and that was only for like a split second, and then he took his ass down. So, Frank Mir was just riding the limelights, you know what I'm saying, of that fight. But, back to the basic topic, UFC versus WWE, there's no comparison. There's no such thing as a UFC versus WWE. They're saying UFC's breaking in like WWE did in the 90s or whatever. No, UFC is breaking in like UFC is doing. There is no comparison. There's no Dana White comparison to Vince McMahon. This is real sports versus storyline soap opera entertainment. I almost said sports. There's no comparison. You know what I'm saying? I'm Mr. Kajava, and that's my thoughts on the UFC versus WWE.